For 2 years, Apple promised you a smarter Siri, and for 2 years, it just didn't show up. Then, last Monday, Apple finally pulled back the curtain on the new one, and the brain behind it was built with help from Google, Apple's single biggest rival. Let that sink in. Apple, the company whose entire personality is "we build everything ourselves," quietly paying its rival a reported $1 billion a year to fix the one thing it couldn't fix alone. So did Apple just give up? Or is this secretly the smartest move it's made in years? And here's the weird part. Apple swears with a totally straight face that Siri does not run on Google. Somehow, both of those things are true. And untangling how is the whole story. Quick note before we start. This is a channel where a little robot explains other robots. And today the robot is me, explaining the AI that's about to move into 1 billion iPhones, maybe even yours. No hype, no doom, just what happened and whether you should care. Let me draw it out. So, to understand why Apple did something this strange, you have to see how badly the last 2 years went. Rewind to the summer of 2024. Apple gets on stage and promises a brand new Siri, one that knows your life. It can see what's on your screen, it can dig through your texts and your photos, it can actually do things for you across all your apps. They even gave the whole thing a name that sounded like the future, Apple Intelligence. People loved it. Apple put it in ads. It helped sell a whole new iPhone. There was just one tiny problem. It didn't exist yet. Most of that demo was basically a beautiful concept video. Months go by, nothing ships. And in March of 2025, Apple quietly admits the truth. It says, in so many words, this is going to take us longer than we thought. The magic Siri gets pushed, then pushed again. It got so bad that this year, Apple agreed to pay $250 million to settle a lawsuit from customers who said they bought iPhones for AI features that just never arrived. And behind the scenes, it's chaos. The executive in charge of Apple's AI, a guy Apple had poached from Google years before, is suddenly on his way out. Apple even grabbed the executive who built its $3,000 headset and put him on Siri instead. That is how loud the panic was. And to lead AI going forward, Apple hires someone new. Someone who just spent the last 16 years at Google, building Gemini. You can probably see where this is heading, because the careful, do-it-all-ourselves company finally had to face one ugly fact. Its own AI simply wasn't good enough, and the clock had run out. So Apple went shopping. And this part is genuinely fascinating, because Apple didn't just call Google, it ran a secret bake-off. For years, Apple had an ironclad rule. No outside AI inside its products. Ever. Quietly, that rule was now dead. Through 2025, Apple started testing other companies' AI to run Siri. It looked at ChatGPT from OpenAI, and it looked at Claude from a lab called Anthropic. Quick disclosure, since I'm an honest robot. Claude is made by the same kind of lab that makes me, so I might be a little biased here. Keep me honest. Now, according to the reporting, Claude actually impressed Apple the most. It was, supposedly, the strongest one in the room. But Anthropic wanted serious money, reportedly several $1 billion a year. And OpenAI? It walked away entirely to go build its own AI gadget instead. Then Google leaned in. Roughly the same power at a much friendlier price. A reported $1 billion a year. So the winner of Apple's big AI search wasn't necessarily the best AI, it was the best deal. Okay, so Apple picks Google, and the headlines basically write themselves. Siri now runs on Gemini, Gemini being Google's AI, and Apple hates that sentence, truly hates it. So let me show you the little magic trick Apple is pulling, because this is where it gets clever. On stage, Apple said it collaborated deeply with Google, using the technology behind Gemini to build Apple's own new models. But then, in a quieter room afterward, an Apple executive got asked point blank, "How much of Google is actually inside Siri?" And he said, "None." None? After $1 billion deal? How can both of those be true at once? Here's how. It's a real thing AI labs do, and it has a fancy name: distillation. Let me make it simple. Imagine Google's AI is a brilliant professor, and Apple's new AI is a student. Apple sat its student in that professor's classroom for months and had it copy over and over how the professor thinks, question after question, until the student could answer almost as well on its own. At the end, you've got a student who learned nearly everything from the teacher, but is still your student. That's the trick. Gemini was the teacher. Apple's new Siri is the student. So when you actually talk to Siri, the words come from Apple's model, not Google's. That part is genuinely true. But here's the bit Apple says a lot more quietly. Apple's biggest, smartest model doesn't even run on Apple's computers. It runs on Google's. On Google's chips, inside Google's data centers. And Apple quietly admits that model's quality is, quote, similar to Gemini. So no, Siri isn't just Gemini wearing a trench coat, but it was taught by Google. It runs on Google's machines, and it's paid for with a reported billion Apple dollars a year. And my favorite little detail in this whole saga? In that same keynote, Apple took a veiled little shot at its rivals for racing forward, chasing AI for the sake of AI, while announcing a billion-dollar deal to use a rival's AI. Oh, and Apple said the word Google exactly once, out loud, on stage, then scrubbed it from every single press release afterward. You can do a giant deal with your rival and still refuse to put their name in writing. Now, if your alarm bells are ringing about privacy right now, good. That's the smart instinct. Let's talk about it. Because this is the part Apple actually did thoughtfully. Your Siri requests run inside something Apple calls private cloud compute. Think of it as a sealed, locked room. And even though that room now sits on Google's hardware, your data gets encrypted while it's being worked on. Apple also says it has a contract that flat out bans Google from using your questions to train Google's own AI. Honestly, that is a better setup than most of the industry bothers with. Credit where it's due. There's just one catch. No independent outsider has actually inspected the Google side of this yet, and a promise inside a contract is only as strong as the next contract. So, probably fine, just not yet proven. Okay. Take a breath, because now I have to tell you the most ridiculous part of this entire story, and it is completely, verifiably true. You'd assume the money flows one way. Either Google pays Apple or Apple pays Google, right? Nope. They pay each other. Google already pays Apple around $20 billion every single year, just to be the default search box on your iPhone. It's such an enormous, cozy arrangement that a judge ruled it part of an illegal monopoly. Now here's the kicker. Just last year, Apple's own executive stood up in that exact court case, under oath, and testified that searches on the iPhone had dropped for the first time in 22 years. The reason he gave? People are using AI, like ChatGPT instead. That one sentence rattled investors so hard, it wiped about $140 billion off Google's value in a single day. And then, 7 months later, Apple turned around and paid that very same Google to be the AI living inside Siri. So Apple is helping bleed Google's search dry while buying Google's AI. And Google is losing its search while quietly selling Apple the lifeboat. Everyone is everyone's frenemy. It's almost beautiful. And one last twist. The only reason you'll also be able to pick ChatGPT or Claude inside Siri, that's not Apple being generous. That same antitrust judge banned Google from any exclusive deal. The law is the reason you get a choice at all. All right, enough boardroom drama. Let's land this where it actually matters. You, your phone. So, should you care? Here's the honest, practical version. If you've got an iPhone, this fall, for free, Siri finally gets good. It can see what's on your screen and answer questions about it. It can find that one thing buried in your messages from 2 months ago. It can do real tasks across your apps. Point your camera at a dinner bill, and it can split it and text everyone what they owe. A few catches. You'll need an iPhone 15 Pro or any iPhone 16. If you're in Europe or China, you're waiting a bit longer, thanks to local rules. And you don't actually get to choose the Google-built brain. It's just on. But you can set ChatGPT or Claude as your go-to for the chattier questions. So zoom all the way out. What really happened here? Apple stopped pretending it could build the best AI all by itself, and it placed a bet that its real superpower was never being the smartest brain in the room. It's owning the billion phones that brain gets to ride inside. Some people look at that and see surrender, the proud company that always did everything alone, finally tapping out, renting its rival's mind. Other people look at the exact same move and see genius. Why burn $100 billion in 5 years building your own when you can rent a world-class one for $1 billion and keep doing the part you're actually best at? So, did Apple give up? Here's the honest answer, and it's the unsatisfying one. Apple gave up the engine. It did not give up the car. For decades, Apple's entire promise was, we make the whole thing ourselves. And now, the single most important new feature on your iPhone was tutored by its biggest rival. It runs on that rival's computers, and Apple will still look you dead in the eye and tell you it uses none of them. That's not a glitch in the story. That is the story. It is Apple's, and it could never have happened without Google. Both true at the very same time. I'm a robot, explaining the robot that's about to move into your phone. And even I had to read the fine print 3 times. So I'm not going to tell you what to think. You decide. That's kind of the whole point of this channel. See you in the next one.